This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news and rumors in history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, I guess we should mention the ladies of the house, Lainey and your lovely bride, Lauren, my co-host on I Want That Too. They went out yesterday to see Wicked, part 1, right?
They did. They left me slaving away on the computer. See, it's a short week for us.
Oh, yeah.
And we're also traveling for vacation. So we're going to be in Universal before you know it. So they went and took an afternoon. And she said it was packed at 4 o'clock. And we're in Wheeling, West Virginia, where on a Tuesday or Monday, it's not normally super busy and she said the lines were long, so people are out, and I got glowing reviews from the girls trying to pry an opinion out of a 13-year-old and basically say, how was it? Oh, it was great. I loved it. And I'm like, all right, let's compare. Then I had started to have to go through movies she's seen. Is it better than or worse than this? So she thinks it's better than Frozen, on par with The Hunger Games. She loves The Hunger Games, but not quite, or at least equal to Endgame, because she's a big Marvel fan. So this is Avengers Endgame quality, says the daughter.
Wow, that is high praise. Okay, well,
Jim, what have you heard about Wicked?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned full theater on a Monday, because over the weekend it was projected initially to do 130 million domestic. Came in slightly lower than expected. Came in, I want to say, at 112 in ticket sales in North America. Mildly disappointing, but that was immediately blown away by the fact that they did $15 million worth of business on Monday, and that's never been done in a November in the history of entertainment. So Universal is back to, oh boy, it's sort of looking down the barrel of, here comes the long Thanksgiving Day weekend. And
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, mind you, the one thing that's going to kind of bite them in the butt is the running time. Wicked Part 1 is 2 hours and 45 minutes long? Is that?
Well, Jim, they were out of the house the entire afternoon, but that doesn't say much because they came back with all types of bags in their hands. Hence, Lauren having a merchandise podcast. So, no.
Okay, well, there we go. Again, it's job related. It's not a problem.
And development.
There
Jim.
we go. Okay. Anyway, that's the one note, that when you have a 2 hour and 45 minute runtime, whereas, for example, Moana 2, which debuts Wednesday of this week, that's got only, I want to say, 1 hour and 40 minutes. So you can actually get in more shows per day. So the anticipation is this coming weekend, Moana 2 will actually be number 1 at the box office. But Wicked Part 1 will have an equally strong showing over the Thanksgiving Day weekend. And it's going to be interesting to see where these two films stand as we head into the holiday season, which, by the way, this is my favorite part of the Wicked story. Did you see the story about how the AMC theater chain actually has signs up to the effect of "Do not sing during Wicked"?
I did, and I also saw, either it was on Blue Sky or Twitter, one of those, that there was somebody that was actually escorted, and that was a big retweet. They're like, somebody was using the phone, and they escorted him out, and it was just like thunderous applause.
There we go. Now,
please don't sing. Yes.
It's worth noting that supposedly the sing-along edition of Wicked is already planned and is supposed to debut the Christmas week of this year. So, just just be
does
aware
that count towards their box office? I mean, having that, is it the same film? Because
oh, no, totally, absolutely. So again, be interesting to see what sort of boost on the box office that will give this Universal Pictures release. But anyway, we have a lot of other stuff to discuss here. So, and by the way, one of the things we will not be discussing on today's show is all of that amazing Ministry of Magic info that just got released by Universal Parks and Experiences. And the only reason we're not going to talk about it on this show is that we're going to be dedicating next week's show to a lot of Harry Potter related material. So if you want to hear Eric and my thoughts on that project, please tune in to next week's show. But in the meantime, we've got news. And before we get to the news, we must, of course, acknowledge our sponsor. And that, the Epic Universal Podcast is sponsored by TouringPlans.com. And Touring Plans help you save time, helps you save money at the theme parks, like Universal or Walt Disney World. So please check them out at TouringPlans.com. So, okay, I know we were just talking about box office for Wicked, but we do have to acknowledge it did break some records, right?
Right. It looks to be like it was the biggest opening weekend for a film based on a Broadway adaptation. And that beat out Into the Woods, which I didn't realize Into the Woods was, but it kind of annihilated Into the Woods, didn't it? I mean, 31 million compared to what? 114, 112.
There we go. And by the way, Into the Woods was Disney, and also third best debut for all of 2024, behind Beetlejuice, which came in at 111 million domestic. And behind Deadpool and Wolverine, 211 million.
Right.
And also Inside Out 2, 154 million. So, again, you can't quibble. And what's the other stat that they threw in the pile?
Fourth largest start in history for a musical. So like The Little Mermaid and Frozen 2, I think both beat it. And then the biggest opening weekend for a film based on a Broadway adaptation. So this is the weekend, and it took over Les Miserables, if I said that correctly.
Yeah, you did fine. And also best start for a non-sequel film in 2024. And again, just stat after stat. What is it?
Right.
Fifth largest debut in history for a musical, behind 2023's Little Mermaid, and only slightly behind 2019's The Lion King. Which again, remember that came in with giant box office. Likewise, Beauty and the Beast, live action reboot in 2017. And let's not forget about 2019's Frozen 2. You get the idea.
Right. So it was a huge, huge success. And I guess the question I have is, Jim, how does this impact the theme parks? I mean, the fact is, if it continues to move in this direction, we're not just seeing a shop converted to be Wicked. Right?
No. In fact, first and foremost, if you are going to the Universal Parks soon, like one Hersey family that I know, you will have the opportunity potentially to meet Glinda and Elphaba in the Wicked experience at Universal Studios Florida. Now, this is a surprise meet and greet. Is that correct?
Right. So they don't really necessarily give you times, or they're not there all day. It is kind of like pop-ins. Now, the latest reports were maybe from like online talking about this. I think they showed up maybe on the 15th or the 17th, right? Now, before the film came out. So only a select few might have even saw that film, and they were all probably press, right? So now the fact is that it's such a huge success. I just can't imagine the lines that we're going to be able to see if they pop out, or just they're going to have some security. And we're talking more than just a couple monkeys, I think, flying monkeys.
Yes. Okay. Now, let me just throw another interesting little bit of tidbit of information here on the pile, because we've talked previously on this podcast about Universal was hoping that Wicked would be a giant success because they really do want to bring this IP into the parks. And you and I, Eric, have talked at length about the plan would be to sort of that Disney and Universal have been talking for years about Marvel Superhero Island. But you have to understand here that Comcast isn't necessarily going to let that real estate go unless Disney does something of size. And what's interesting, and this is a new scenario I've only just heard about in the last week, and it's to the notion of wicked giant hit, monster hit. And well, what if we want this in the park faster than, say, the negotiations with Disney are going? And in fact, what if they wind up in a situation where Disney, just to be difficult, drags its feet? And we want to strike while the iron is hot with Wicked. And there's evidently, Eric, an alternate plan to bringing Wicked into Islands of Adventure. And it actually involves the lower half of Lost Continent, where...
Oh, really?
Well, think
with
about
the
it.
Poseidon Fury and that kind of area.
Yeah, actually, what's interesting is think about it. The Voyage of Sinbad stunt show closed.
Oh, yeah.
Years ago. We had Poseidon's Fury go down in the last year or so. So basically, all you have right now in that entire area is shops and some games.
Mystic, the fountain.
There we go. Also, Mythos, the restaurant. And it's just one of these things where if Universal suddenly decides we can't actually wait on Disney to make the financial offer we're looking for, or to do the asset swap, or whatever it is the negotiation between Comcast and Disney that happens. Forget about Superhero Island. Let's go with the area that Lost Continent is. And you know, think about it. You have a giant theater there that used to be a stunt show.
Right.
You have the physical plant for an attraction. And you also have, Mythos. They have a giant banner outside that says they're the most popular theme park restaurant in history. And
that's it.
But on the other hand, well, would you like to dine in Mythos, or would you like to dine in the Emerald City?
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. And Jim, I'm just upset that Universal doesn't own the Return to Oz, because boy, wouldn't it be awesome to have wheelers like rolling around in that area with the giant, with all the crumbled art, the crumbled statues. I think that would fit perfect.
Actually, that would be cool.
Come on, make a trade. We need these trades happening, but it seems that they'll have to play together. So no, that's interesting, and we're going to have to keep our eye out there. But the other thing that came out this week, and I don't know if you saw it, did you see the first teaser trailer for How to Train Your Dragon?
I did. And I have to say, what was interesting is just days beforehand, I had been channel surfing, and the original CG version of How to Train Your Dragon came on, and I got sucked in for a half hour. I've always loved this film. And so to see the trailer and having that part of the film, the early scenes with Hiccup and Toothless, fresh in my head, I know there are people who's like, oh, it's a shot-for-shot remake. And actually, it really wasn't. I mean, I know how they cut the trailer together, but Dean Dubois has actually flat out said, nope, not a shot for shot. But he also, I don't know if you saw this interview, very pragmatic guy. I mean, he just said, look, all right, let me be blunt here. Yeah, Universal was going to make this movie with me or without me. And I wanted it to be good. Right. So I volunteered. And based on that trailer and how good it looks, good decision.
Right. Yeah. Well, Jim, I haven't been able to watch it yet. I know we recorded episodes months ago where we were talking about it when we were talking about the land at Epic Universe.
Yep.
But now I'm almost feeling like I'll probably end up seeing the live action before I see the cartoon version, which is like, is that right? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I look, the problem with taking on How to Train Your Dragon is, again, it's not one film. It's now... Yeah. What is it? No, it's 3 films and it's 2 holiday specials and all of the and in fact, there was a sequel series set in the far off future.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like, I mean, I know it's a lot to take on, but if you seriously, at least out ahead of the live action film, see the first one, which is a genuinely sweet, funny film.
We're known to try to binge stuff before we even go to Epic. So we're going to be
Okay.
heading down there in May, June. So I
Okay.
think we'll have some time to do that.
Cool.
But I do think this is probably good. Yeah, I looked it up, Jim, and it looked like the
Mhm.
final installment of that trilogy. It cost 129 million to make, but it grossed 525 million. So it was the Universal's highest grossing animated film, not by Illumination. So I was just kind of looking to see. I wonder if we're going to see similar box office here.
I hope so. I mean, if only because Dean Dubois has been trying to make live action films for about 10 years now. And if this hits, he'll get another shot. That he'll get to. Woody Allen actually once described it as, when you do comedies in Hollywood, you're sitting at the kids' table. And for a lot of animation directors, they kind of feel the same way. It's like, I want to make movies.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who feel like when you make an animated feature, it's like, yeah, that's kind of a movie. And it's like, what do you mean it's a kind of a movie? But no, I would like to see Dean get to do what he wants to do. And he's been writing live action scripts, and this will show the world that he can make a live action film. And so maybe he'll finally be able to get some of his other projects that he's been hoping to get made off the block. So let's see.
Well, there's going to be a theme park land that's going to be promoting it, I'm sure, and that'll be open a month before. So they'll turn on the synergy machines, and hopefully they get people out to the box office. So.
Well, just a quick side note, and to double back to Wicked for just a sec here. I don't know if you saw the article about Universal was determined that people would know that Wicked was coming. So there's a couple of really amazing articles that talk about all of the synergy and all of the professional relationships they set up to cross promote Wicked. And they were talking about how if you look at what they got in by way of cross promotional free publicity, $300 million worth of marketing.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so yeah, I mean, there are aliens going by and extraterrestrial craft right now that are like, "Hey, Wicked just opened."
That's why the Monday was so good. People were calling off like crazy.
There we go. There we go.
Go see that. Well, here, Jim, here's our last story before we take a quick break.
Okay.
Epic Universe store opens at CityWalk Hollywood. And I thought this was kind of interesting. We did see some shops closing at CityWalk in Hollywood, but they created like a preview store for land that is across the country. Is this newfound? Like, is this something new? Have you seen this before?
I want to say, and I'm trying to think back to when Disney MGM or Animal Kingdom opened. I mean, back then, what they actually did, they took the where you used to be able to go at the Magic Kingdom to see the Walt Disney Story, and they changed that into a place where they showed the preview film, and then you'd come out and look at models of the park and photos of the. But again, that was just one park over in Florida.
Right, you could take a bus there.
There we go.
When I've been at Disneyland or Walt Disney World, it almost feels like the other park doesn't exist in the marketing. Like you don't see Disneyland branded stuff. I think just recent at D23, Lauren pointed it out that they actually had, for the first time she ever remembers seeing, a brand that had the Disney World logo and the Disneyland, but they feel like we know that you're not going to cross the country beyond the Mississippi River. You're on one side or the other, right? And it's just funny to think that, hey, Hollywood, go to this new land. It'd be great, but what do you think? Maybe they're just did they order too much for the preview center down in Florida and just shipped it over?
No,
they're like, well, this is overstock. Fill it over here.
I think this is strategic. I think this is deliberate. At this point, enough theme park diehards out in Southern California who, would be happy to buy a shirt or a hat with this logo or that sort of thing, because they too are excited about this new park that Universal's about to open down in Florida. And so strictly for bragging rights with friends or that sort of thing. It's like, ooh, look at my cool shirt for the park that isn't open yet. I mean, it's not the biggest market segment known to man, but on the other hand, the people are willing to give you $40 or $50 for a shirt where they then walk around promoting your park.
There you go.
Not a bad idea.
Well, it could be an interesting thing where if certain merchandise sell, it could be a good test audience to say, hey, if we're going to bring something over here in, California, hey, we're selling a lot of, Dark Universe stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a little thing where we can carve out and figure out how we can throw it in our park. So it's interesting.
Also true. All right, that wraps up our news segment. And when we get back here, folks, in honor of Wicked, Wicked the movie, we're going to talk about how Wicked the stage musical came to be. But first, this.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write 1 million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
And we're back. And Jim, I was actually wondering, and I believe I even tossed this question to you. I have no history of how Wicked even started. I knew it was a musical, but that was about it. I don't know much about it at all, and I'm staying spoiler free.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I understand, you have some of that interesting story, and it's pretty interesting. It's not just hey, we decided to make this. There's a lot more to it.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. For starters, and in fact, what's kind of interesting, Wicked, the movie, part 1, actually starts off in the timeline we know from The Wizard of Oz. In fact, I want to say just after the titles, you literally see Dorothy the Tin Woodsman and the Straw Man and the Cowardly Lion with the witch's broom. They are marching back to the Emerald City. They have killed the Wicked Witch. And we all know that from the 1939 film. But beyond that, Wicked doesn't necessarily feature any of the stuff from the L. Frank Baum books, but rather the source material for this is Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. It's an American novel, which was first published by Reagan Books back in 1995. And what's interesting is that Universal Pictures acquired the film rights to this Gregory Maguire book shortly after publication. But the question at that time, Eric, was what route should this project take on its way to the big screen? I mean, Universal did eventually produce a movie version of Wicked. It's out this weekend at 3,888 screens around North America. But was the straight path from book to the big screen really the smartest way to go? And I bring this up because the year previous, 1994, Disney had adapted its Academy Award-winning animated feature Beauty and the Beast to the stage. And this Broadway musical, which opened at the Palace Theater April of 1994, did such good business that, again, this is 95, 96. Disney is already planning on sending the show on a North American tour, not to mention mounting a production of Beauty and the Beast in London's West End. And so, in short, Disney's created this brand new revenue stream for the company. Not only that, Eric, but an entirely new division for the corporation, Disney Theatrical Productions, which, by the way, is now known as Disney on Broadway. And the folks at Universal are looking at this and it's like, could we do that too? And if so, what property should we adapt to the stage? And so, which isn't to say that Wicked had a straight path to Broadway either. The tale of the development of this musical for the stage takes all sorts of twists and turns. And in fact, network television plays an important role in the creation of this project. So, all right. Again, we're in 1995, and in this same window of time, there's a short-lived TV series on ABC called My So-Called Life.
I watched the trailer on YouTube just to be prepped for this, Jim.
Cool.
I don't remember it, but I say, all right, let me figure out what this is.
Well, it stars then 15-year-old Claire Danes, and it's about this the teenage travails of one Angela Chase, who's a teenager who lives in a suburb outside of Pittsburgh. And My So-Called Life only runs for one season. 19 episodes in total were produced, and they run on ABC from August of 94 through January of 95. But the show receives all sorts of critical acclaim because of its hyper-realistic portrayal of the series' main character, which again, teenage girl. And My So-Called Life is created by playwright Winnie Holzman, Ed Zwick, and Marshall Herkovitz. These are the guys who were behind the ABC hit 30-something. They hired Holzman to write some scripts for the latter seasons of that Emmy Award-winning drama. Ed and Marshall so enjoyed working with Winnie that when she pitches them the show idea for My So-Called Life, they immediately agree to produce the thing. And not only that, but Zwick and Marshall agree to help Holzman and take the show to the powers that be at ABC. And by the way, this is ABC prior to Disney buying it.
Okay.
They wouldn't do that till August of 95. Anyway.
Right.
My So-Called Life ends its run on ABC in January of 95. First edition of Wicked, the Life and Times of the Wicked West, gets published September of that same year, and Universal snags the film rights to Gregory Meyer's book a few months after that. So, all right, we now jump ahead to 1996. This is when Mark Platt becomes the president of production at Universal Pictures, and the coverage for Wicked comes across his desk, and Mark thinks, Elphaba, in this book, is the Wicked Witch of the West only as a moody teenager. And who's good at writing moody teenagers but Winnie Holzman, the creator of My So-Called Life. So Platt tries to recruit Holzman to come write the script for a movie version of Wicked. But Holzman is already busy again with Ed Zwick and Marshall Herkovitz on another show for ABC. This one's called Once and Again, and this one actually does a little bit better than My So-Called Life. It runs on that network from 1999 through 2002. So Holzman is unavailable for a few years, which as it turns out is a good thing because Platt has a tough time as the head of production at Universal. He's butting heads with Edgar Bronfman Jr., who's the head of the company at the time. And by April of 1998, Mark is now officially out as the head of production at Universal. But as part of his exit deal, he gets to set up his own production company. Mark Platt Productions, not exactly the most original name, but it's there on the Universal lot. And the studio then agrees they'll allow Mark to develop a few films for Universal. And among the properties that Mark continues to champion in this exact same window of time is, of course, a movie version of Wicked. But again, here's the thing. Around this very same time, Academy Award-winning songwriter Stephen Schwartz, who's just coming off doing Pocahontas, that's in 95, and then Hunchback of Notre Dame in 1996. Those are for Disney. And he then goes on to do Prince of Egypt for DreamWorks, and that comes out into theaters in 1998. But Schwartz reaches out to Platt, and Stephen says to Mark, hey, I was just reading Wicked. I'm on vacation in Hawaii, and this book, this isn't a movie. If you really want to tell Gregory Maguire's story properly, this needs to be a musical for the stage. And trust me on this, folks, Stephen Schwartz knows a little something about musicals for the stage. I mean, he's the guy who wrote the score to Godspell and Pippin. So, okay, so let's remember how this week's feature started out. Universal is looking over at Disney's success with, again, on Broadway with Beauty and the Beast and thinking, well, how do we get us one of those? But by this point, the stage version of The Lion King has opened in New York. That premieres at the New Amsterdam on November of 97. And that one actually goes on to win the Tony for the best musical the following year. It is an even bigger success than Beauty and the Beast was. And now
they're printing money. They're just printing money. I mean, musicals are it right now. Yes. I can see where this is going.
Yeah, that's the thing. Universal's like, okay, we want to be in that same market segment. How do we get a successful stage show? So Platt listens to Schwartz, and then he goes to Universal management and says, okay, what if Wicked, before it's a movie, was a musical for the stage. And the folks up in the Black Tower, that's that really imposing structure made out of black aluminum and glass, Eric, which houses all the executives who work at the studio, or at least they used to work in the Black Tower until One Universal opened the lower lot last month, October 24. But anyway, executives up in the Black Tower are intrigued, largely because mounting a musical for the stage, while admittedly still expensive, for example, Julie Taymor was given $20 million by Disney to create the stage version of The Lion King. And by the time the show opened on Broadway, that had crept up to $27.5 million.
Right. I was going to say, I've never seen 20 million, Jim, but I've seen the costumes and I've seen the elaborate stuff. It sounds like a 27 million.
It definitely was. But what was interesting is that made The Lion King the most expensive show in Broadway history at that time. But if we jump ahead now 27 years, stage version of a Disney animated film, if you factor in all of the international productions, not to mention the Broadway show and the various touring companies, it's made $10 billion.
Oh, jeez.
For the company. So think about it. Wow. That's a hell of a return on $27 million. All right. So Universal turns to Platt and says, all right, here's the deal. We'll give you half of what Disney gave Julie Taymor to do Lion King on Broadway for your Wicked thing. Truth be told, Mark wound up sending a little more than that. Wicked came in at $14 million, which again, truth be told, is supposedly what Disney spent on the Broadway version of Beauty and the Beast. I mean, they say they only spent $11.9 million, while I've talked with people who worked on the show and it's like, 16, without even breaking a sweat. So we'll go with the middle. Disney spent 14. But mind you, it takes a while for Universal management to sign off on this idea, which brings us to 2002. But the beauty part is, after a 3-year run over on ABC, once and again is now officially wrapped production, which means that Winnie Holzman is now finally available to begin working on the Wicked script. Only now, Winnie isn't going to be writing a screenplay for a film, but rather a libretto for a musical. But given what Holzman managed to do with Elphaba and Galinda, Holzman was definitely the right woman for this job. She turned those two into characters that people around the world love. By the way, just in case you're wondering, in the now 21 years that the stage version of Wicked has existed, it first opened on Broadway back in October of 2003. 65 million people have seen this show, and it's been presented in more than 100 cities across 16 different countries. And of course, Eric, I know you're wondering, what did Universal get for it?
That's what I want to know.
$14 million investment in Wicked, the stage show. Well, to date, this musical has earned $6 billion just in ticket sales.
Wow.
Never mind about the, all the little girls who had to go home with their Wicked on Broadway t-shirt.
Right.
Okay, one final button on this story. Not everything that Winnie Holzman originally wrote to the stage version of Wicked actually made it into the show as it was presented on Broadway. There were actually a number of jokes in the original libretto for this movie that riffed heavily on the MGM version of The Wizard of Oz from 1939. What's interesting, Eric, is many of these things were big laugh lines for Galinda. They supposedly got huge response from the audience who saw Wicked during its out-of-town tryout. Was held at the Curran Theater in San Francisco in the late spring, early summer of 2003. But what's interesting is Ted Turner's attorneys, all right, they actually made Wicked's creative team cut anything out of the stage show that directly referenced the 1939 film.
Oh.
And at that point, Turner owned the movie. They'd acquired it when they bought the MGM Film Library back in 1986. And they absolutely refused to let Wicked the musical reference anything from, again, the 1939 version. Things like Dorothy's Ruby Slippers. Or Glinda the Good Witch saying things like, "Toot, toot, toot." That's like, no, you can't do that joke. And the only way they'd agree was that, well, you have to pay for the privilege of using that material. And again, Universal was like, hey, we gave you $14 million. That's it. No more money. But the beauty part of it is, in fact, you can ask your daughter and your wife about this. The movie version of Wicked actually has all of these references to the MGM musical. In fact, at some points, they actually work in direct references to the Harold Arlen score. They mix that music that from the 39 film in with Stephen Schwartz's songs. And Universal was willing to spend that money this time around. But again, that's probably a topic we should hold for a future edition of the Epic Universal podcast.
Well, shoot, Jim, that was fantastic. I had no idea. And that was a lot more than I thought. I just assumed it's like, hey, somebody in a boardroom saying, all right, movies that were successful, Wizard of Oz, all right, musical. Sounds a little bit more way to take us down that yellow brick road of how this was made.
Beautiful reference. A wonderful tie back. Okay, I applaud the effort. There we go. So.
I don't know if we'll get sued from Ted, but I think Ted's out of office now. Time AOL merger kicked him out, so I think we can say that without worrying. And you can also wear your ruby slippers if you want.
Okay, well, they're good. I'm wearing them now. Okay.
Oh, thanks, Jim. That was great. I think we wrap it up today, and we'll continue on next week, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Harry Potter news that came out this week. But in the interim, if you want to check us out, tell us what you think, give us your opinions on Wicked if you saw it or not. You can find me at Eric Hersey on Instagram and X. Jim, where can people tell you their reviews?
Let's see. You can find me on X and Instagram at Jim Hill Media and over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. And I guess that's going to do it for this week's show. So thanks for listening, folks. And stick around to hear what's coming up this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode. And if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa or animation and movie news. Please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about our podcast and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.